welcome back. Thank you so much for joining us on the virtual stream and in person today. If you want to come move forward, by all means, but otherwise, we're gonna have a really interesting discussion right now. I am beyond thrilled to introduce some fantastic panelists. As you can see above, we have Michael Ringel, Managing Director and Senior Partner at BCG, Boston Consulting Group. We also have Joanna Bensz, who is the CEO and founder of Longevity Center, who is supporting us in a very big way as well downstairs, and the same with Quadrascope, represented by Fiona Miller, and she's the Managing Partner. So today we're going to have a really interesting discussion about business applications for longevity science. There's a lot of questions that I'm asked around, even if you're a therapeutic, if you're a supplement, what about a tool or resource that an organization might need to support growth and development of capabilities? What does that look like? How else can I help with the skills that I have? And what is the actual customer need at this point in time? Because you also want to make sure the timing is right. If you're too early, things won't work. And especially because a lot of the things happening in the space have to do with something that's novel. We are in in an emerging field. And so when you want funding for that idea, you have to justify that, and you have to come up with some compelling consideration for, well, is it the right time? Will consumers be ready for it? Is pharma ready for it? Is the FDA ready for it? So all these questions create this kind of hostile and yet interesting and opportunistic ecosystem and environment for discovery and development and really some amazing stuff. And so we're going to talk about that today. I would like to give a little bit more of a background on our speakers. So Joanna, thank you for joining us, is an accomplished entrepreneur with extensive experience in leadership roles at multinational and Fortune 500 companies in Europe. This woman is a pioneer in the development of an advanced personalized preventive medicine that is powered by deep biomarkers of aging and longevity. And as CEO and co-founder, together with Prince Michael von Liechtenstein of Longevity Center Europe, her passion for healthcare, human potential, wellness, and performance has led her to be able to establish the first longevity center back in 2019 in Poland, where she built a world-class team focused on preventative and longevity interventions based on in-depth diagnostics, epigenetics, and biomarkers of biological age. The center is equipped with the most modern devices and technological solutions, enabling a comprehensive assessment of health and the implementation of innovative health programs. They have a booth downstairs, and if you'd like to also engage and ask questions online, you can reach out through the conference platform app and connect with Joanna and her team and see if you'd like to visit the clinic or learn more about it. So thank you so much for being here. Moving right along, next to me we have Fiona Miller, incredible managing partner at Quadrascope Venture Fund. This fund invests in longevity biotech companies working to dramatically extend human health span. So Fiona's been an investor in the longevity biotech industry since 2021. And a philanthropist as well, massive supporter of Lifespan.io. And prior to joining the longevity investment community, her focus was actually on wireless technologies. Initially, you were working as an electronics design engineer and an R&D manager before going off on your own to launch new technology ventures, which is incredible. She is a successful technology entrepreneur with 3 exits, including 12x exit in 2021, 12-time exit. She was a founder and the CEO of Octoscope, which was sold to Spirit Communications. Also founder and CTO of Azimuth Systems, which was sold to Anritsu, in 2016. And the VP of Engineering at Scope Communications, which was sold to Hewlett-Packard, which is now Keysight, back in 1998. This woman next to me now holds 10 patents. And last but not least, we have Michael Ringel, Managing Director and Senior Partner at BCG. This is Boston Consulting Group, which is a $12 billion annual revenue global consulting firm. He is their global leader for innovation, analytics, and research, and product development, and is a core member of the firm's corporate finance and strategy practice, and is also strategic advisor to Life Biosciences, as well as an active advocate for longevity science and innovation. This gentleman's TED Talk on innovation can be viewed at TED.com. We are so delighted that BCG is our knowledge partner for this event, a strong endorsement of the importance of the longevity field. So a warm welcome to our fantastic panel. We're going to have an amazing discussion today. And with that, I'm going to kick off with our first question directed at Michael. Please tell us, what would be the economic or GDP impact of improving longevity in your opinion?
Great. Well, it's a great place to start. So first of all, thank you, Stephanie, for having us and for the whole event. It's really fantastic and great to see folks here. So I think there are two ways to come at that question. So one is there's actually a ton of work on the gray wave, right? The aging of society and what that means. And that's not exactly lifespan and health span extension, right? But it has some of the same features because some of the assumptions that folk make when they're looking at projections of that, they assume some incremental production, incremental consumption by folks. And of course, the second way is there actually is a small literature on looking specifically at impacts of lifespan and health span. So I'll start with the first and then come to the latter. So when you look at what's in the literature around the coming gray wave, just to ground us first of all, so in 2050, not that far from now, there will be 1.6 billion people who are over 65, including myself. That's double what it is today, and it'll be 1 in every 6 people. And when economists look at that and project what does that mean, there are a lot of downsides that they look at. They say, wow, that means entitlements are going to grow, things like Social Security. That means healthcare spending is going to grow. And it means we're going to have maybe a smaller workforce as proportion of the population to support a tax base, for example. At the same time, there's huge upsides, right? This is a set of folks, like all people, who produce, who consume, who contribute to society. And because it's such a large cohort, there should be whole new businesses that spring up around this to serve it. So you think about silver tourism or encore careers or lifelong learning and so on. But when they net all that out, most economists look at this and say this is a coming disaster, real peril that's going to drain the coffers of nations. So what do you do about that? And that's where the second line of literature comes in. And it's much smaller, but the folks who have looked at this specifically around if we could extend lifespan and health span have found huge benefits. So Goldman and colleagues used a model, and that includes J.L. Shansky, which some folks here I'm sure know, looked at a model developed at RAND called the Future Elderly Model and said, okay, let's make a very small assumption about extension of lifespan and health span, and play that through in terms of increased production, increased consumption. And yes, it does mean increased entitlements. It does mean increased healthcare cost. But net, because of those upsides, it should add $7 trillion to the economy. And then Scott and colleagues more recently looked at a greater extension. And they had the very colorful names around it. It was the Wolverine scenario, the Peter Pan scenario, the Struldbrug, and the Dorian Gray. And if I just take one of those, the Dorian Gray scenario, which was we're not going to extend lifespan at all, but we'll extend health span by 10 years. They calculated through using a pretty similar model to the RAND model that's worth $360 trillion positive benefit to the economy. So the net of all this is while some folks look at longevity science as a potential risk to the economy because now you have people living longer, in fact, it's exactly the opposite. It's the answer to the problems of the gray wave, and that's why there's so much interest and why there should be a lot of specific business opportunities, which I hope we'll talk about.
It's a fantastic answer, and I have 14 other follow-up questions, but I'm going to refrain. So, Joanna and Fiona, what are you working on today that's relevant to what Michael just shared with us?
As you already mentioned, we opened the first longevity clinic in 2019, and since then we have 2 more. And what we are trying to do is really to implement all this, what we can hear today about longevity science, into medical practice and actually make it practical for day-to-day use for our customers. So my clinics are run by medical doctors, and we have to follow all the medical regulations. So we are trying actually to bring all the innovations that are today possible in terms of diagnostics and testing, biological ages, and then a follow-up recommendations, including certain treatments and other recommendations on how to actually improve those markers, and retesting. So we're really trying to be a proactive medicine center of the future.
Yes, and my fund is obviously engaged in working directly with the founders and the companies looking for funding, companies at seed and pre-seed stage, early stage biotech companies. And our fund is focusing on strictly on longevity biotech. But it is hard to separate. The longevity biotech is tightly intertwined with the mainstream biotech and big pharma, because in many ways it uses the cell therapy, gene therapy platforms, AI and machine learning, all these tools, powerful tools with a ton of investment that really is applicable across the board. Yet longevity sector of this industry can leverage all of this wonderful investment and progress, but the focus is really on proactive medicine, like these wellness clinics of functional medicine, where we try to treat the hallmarks of aging ahead of diseases and not wait for the diseases. So that's really the difference, is really in how we apply all this powerful technology and all this vast investment into biotech. There are some differences. There are companies in, for example, cellular reprogramming, which don't exist in the mainstream, that receive billions of dollars of funding, companies like Altos Labs and Turn Bio, for example. And the companies that we fund, they always have an indication, some disease, but they are focusing on the hallmarks of aging. I'm assuming most of you know about the hallmarks of aging, the 12. And through treating these hallmarks, they can select one or more diseases. For example, Rob and Waskia Manuscani from Deciduous Therapeutics, their indications are pulmonary fibrosis and type 2 diabetes, but they're actually targeting senescent cells to get the cures for these conditions. Another example is Nanotics that manufactures small 120 nanometer particle that can clear the blood of any target inflammatory protein or cancer-causing protein. So their indication is cancer and sepsis, but they actually attack 3 different hallmarks, starting with cellular communication, inflammation, and senescence. So that's kind of the nature of the beast. It's a small subset of the biotech industry. It's kind of rebellious in many ways, and it's propelled by a lot of Silicon Valley money and crypto money and Silicon Valley talent, myself included. And kind of a different application, if you will, of this vast technology that's being developed out there.
So one thing just to note, there's another panel later actually with Robin from Deciduous, and we're going to be talking about kind of straddling this line as you're pitching not only to investors but also consumers as if you're a longevity company versus a traditional biotech company. So stay tuned for that. But based on what you said, Michael, what's going on with pharma? When are they going to get involved? What's the hesitation there? How does it work?
So I have a long-term answer and a short-term answer. I'll start with the long-term one, because I think it's actually fundamental and something that's really important to all of us. The thing that, if you look at any social movement, the thing that has driven the social movements have been grassroots. It has to be the public is interested. And when the public is interested, then policymakers, lawmakers are interested. When lawmakers are interested, then the administrative branch is interested. NIH funding, right? You think about Alzheimer's, right? Captured the public imagination, has captured a lot of funding, rightly so. When NIH is interested in this funding, then academics start to work in the space. When academics work in the space, biotechs spring up, and when biotechs spring up, ultimately it goes to pharma. So there is a task in front of all of us, because we probably know things like the Pew Center research on people's awareness of this space. Something like 7% of people feel like they've read or heard a lot about this, and probably way less than that think of this as a priority. That's a call to action for all of us, right? To think through, okay, how do we actually build a coalition of people, all of us as citizens, as members of society, to say this is important and it matters, because it does. So that's the long-term answer. It takes a while to flow through. I think you're probably asking more around the short-term answer. And there, Fiona, I think you hit on it. Ultimately, what pharmaceutical companies care about are medicines that work, that have data that show they can address an indication that is an approvable indication. And there's absolutely a pathway there, which is if you get a product into proof of concept and show that there is, efficacy and safety in humans, there'll be absolute interest for licensing or acquisition, and over time, building units around this. So that's just kind of a second call to action, because I think a lot of folks here are in biotechs in this field, and that's basically that's the path, right? Come up with therapies that address indications, and pharma will be interested.
So I also think that you're talking about bottom-up, grassroots, is what the people want. And I think Lifespan.io is really focused on that. We also believe it's top-down, which is why we also have relationships with government agencies. ARPA-H will be here soon. We'll talk about that. And there are other ways to do things. And I think it has to be a mixed approach, because otherwise it'll take too long. But you're absolutely right. And the whole premise of Lifespan is based on the history of cancer. Right? It used to be this pariah disease that nobody talked about, or was only talked about in whispers. And now it's considered a global priority with a ton of funding and attention. And how did that change? What was that transition? And it really has to do with media, strategic media initiatives, crowdfunding, which is what our organization started as, and also just getting the public on board. And so we have a lot of challenges ahead of us still about perceptions and beliefs about what is possible regarding aging. And I think we have these deeply seated belief systems that, it's something that's inevitable, it comes with suffering, and that's nature, that's life. But because of not only the acceleration, but the convergence of technologies, these new possibilities are coming to fruition. But the public doesn't know that, and it's really hard to change your mindset. And so we're all working on that together. And with that said, I'm curious, for a path forward, one, do we need aging to be classified as a disease? And how are the businesses that you're in today kind of playing into that concept?
I think for us, definitely there's a lot you can do today already. So we're definitely waiting until the pharmaceutical industry gets on board, also insurance companies, so that some of these services can be actually covered by insurance. Today, most of the longevity clinics actually are out-of-the-pocket companies, because we are focusing on precision medicine, on prevention, on something that you need to understand how to measure, and also measure then results. This is why in the longevity space there is a lot of very interesting solutions at the moment, like the whole area of hallmarks of aging, and we can measure most of the hallmarks today. A growing area of new biomarkers of biological age, which actually help us to then define and also check results, whether some of the interventions that we recommend to our clients connected with whether diet, exercise, or even pharmacological solutions. Because of course, when we are doing the overall medical assessment, there's a lot of not everybody is a healthy client coming to us. Although I like your question as well, when is it the right time to start? At the beginning, and also in many discussions, a lot of people think that longevity should be mainly focusing on older people. But actually, the younger you are, it's a very big misconception. And also, this is what I'm very happy that most of our clients, and we have over 1,500 clients today, they are around, the average customer is about 40. And I would say this is one of the best times to start, because on one side you see that there is a lot in your biology and your physical strengths that is different than 20 years ago, but there's also a lot you can improve. So we are focusing, for me and for our clinic, really longevity is about vitality today, which is going to hopefully stay with us for the future.
Yeah. Oh, go on.
Sure. Well, I can see how for medical care, classification of aging is important to get coverage and insurance support and so forth. For actually bringing drugs to market and cures to market, it is a nice to have, but it's not the key roadblock. And the reason is what I said earlier, the companies we invest in, by virtue of treating the hallmarks of aging, they can target one or more diseases. And so there's really not a huge barrier for them to get through the FDA just the way Big Pharma is getting through the FDA today. And then they have this alternative market of anybody over 40 who wants to stay biologically young and will do proactive treatment. I think a bigger impact on the whole industry, and as I said earlier, they're tightly intertwined, the big conventional pharma and longevity, biotech are intertwined in that we're all subject to 10 years and $1 billion investment into bringing a new drug to market. For someone who comes from high tech, who was able to get her company from the basement to market in a year and start making revenue, that's just amazing. 10 years. Okay.
Yeah.
And so I would submit that some of the changing the regulations across the board on the entire biotech industry would have a much bigger impact on longevity as well as all of our health.
And maybe to build on your comment, but not, it's a little bit of a red herring, right? Is aging a disease or not? Because it's not needed in the near term. You can make arguments about longer term, but because, I think everyone knows it, because aging is the #1 risk factor for all these diseases of interest, whether it's neurodegeneration or cancer or cardiovascular disease. If you believe the gero.science hypothesis that by modulating that you can modulate the diseases, there's a very clear path to approval, whether that's prevention or treatment of the diseases. And there's lots of precedent, right? So, I guess underneath the kind of core of the gero.science hypothesis is that one medicine might treat a lot of different diseases, right, including across therapeutic areas. But there are other situations where that has happened in the past. If you look at certain disease areas where there's lots of overlap because the mechanisms overlap, and we probably don't fully understand the diseases. What we think clinically are separate diseases they're actually related diseases. So things like in psychiatry, it's very common to go depression, anxiety, et cetera. In immunology, it's very common to look at indications that are related, rheumatoid arthritis, psoriasis, ankylosing spondylitis, ulcerative colitis, Crohn's, et cetera. So there's precedent for taking one medicine and applying it in multiple ways. There's even, if you can prove the mechanisms are similar, there's even precedent for a single approval across diseases. The first one of these was pembrolizumab in 2017 in immuno-oncology. Because there was a belief that there was a shared underlying mechanism, one trial could give you approval in multiple diseases. So I think that's a ways away in geroscience, but that's the promise that one medicine may actually affect multiple diseases.
But can I add something else which I also observe? I think, and this was mentioned as well in one of the main panels, that we need to have more doctors and medical community understanding what's going on here in the sector and actually better understand the progress. Because if you ask a doctor that has never been exposed to longevity, they actually don't know how to work with any of those biomarkers. And so I think for these approvals to take place, I think it's also very important to have validated solutions in the medical field among medical clinics. But on the other side, this is also a very, very important, let's say, mission for us, so that we don't overpromise, that we really are very diligent in testing, but also in the recommendations that we are giving. A lot of our clients are, reading different books or listening to podcasts, and then they are coming and they want to have rapamycin, metformin, and they know best what they need. But actually, I think that the real focus on longevity clinic is really to better understand your baseline and to understand actually what is good for you at the moment that you are today, and what can we recommend for you to improve your health. And so I think this is because I see a lot of longevity clinics popping up, but I think it would be also very, very important to focus on what we should be really recommending to our clients and how can we measure effects.
Out of curiosity, do you see some kind of path for people who are interested in pursuing that type of career for the sake of that business application? What is the prescription for someone to be able to say, okay, this is what I need to do and this is how I can do it to solve that problem or fill that gap?
You mean for the doctors? Or?
As an example, sure.
I mean, I think there's a lot of opportunities in the sector. I mean, running a clinic, I see we need more doctors. We need more, let's say, health coaches, people that are really aware of what is really working in terms of longevity interventions, lifestyle. We need more and more supplements or personalized solutions. We need platforms that are bringing all this knowledge together. There's so many, and this is not only in the science, I'm talking about the business opportunities for people from outside of the sector. Not to mention data, comparing all the data and the AI solutions for the knowledge that we have. I mean, one doctor is not able to analyze all this data and understand it and give the best possible solution. So we are really looking at platforms and integrated approach and AI-based approaches that can help to to monitor and recommend the right solutions. So I hope this answers your question.
Yeah, and I mean, there's a long answer and there's plenty of answers we don't even know about, but let's stick to AI and ML for a second, right? And so Michael and Fiona, as it relates to the work that you do, whether it is advising big corporations or it is evaluating early stage startups, when it comes to AI and ML, how familiar are the people that are coming to you, and how promising is it? Where are we on that kind of time horizon, and what are you seeing?
So it's happening, and AI and ML are enormously important for biotech. They fall into two categories. One is to accelerate drug discovery through analyzing thousands of compounds and pre-selecting the ones that will work best, thereby shortening the drug development cycle. The other is what Joanna, what you were saying, is really helping, being a doctor's assistant, if you will, so that eventually it will be AI and machine learning computers who will be able to analyze the vast torrent of information that comes from sensors and biomarkers and omics. There's an increasing number of devices that are about to hit the market for the home. How do we integrate all that? A human being cannot do a good job. So eventually we will need that AI and machine learning to come online. And personally, I would like to have much shorter sampling time on all of these biomarkers. If you look at the world today, Peter Attia is probably the most recognized doctor. He has a waiting list of patients a mile long. He charges $100,000 per patient to treat them for a year. And what is he doing differently? He pays, first of all, a lot of attention to research, so he knows some of the papers. A computer, an AI machine learning app, can read all those papers. So if a patient comes with some indications, you can say immunogenesis, give me all the papers, which one answers this question, right? So a human being cannot go and read all those papers, but a machine learning tool can, and it can run circles around Peter Attia in that respect. Another thing Peter Attia does is he does a lot of measurements. He can keep a patient in his clinic for a day in order to measure the response to a drug, the metabolomics and so forth. And we don't do that today. We go and measure our inflammation, for example, a bunch of other things once a year, maybe once every few months. But HSCRP, it changes every day. It changes throughout the day. And if I start taking a new supplement that, for example, increases my inflammation, how do I know? I'm going to miss that spike.
We do that.
So you do that. Well, that's good. But if we need a lot more automation and processing of that, because ultimately you don't want to be charging $100,000. That's going to lock a lot of people out. So for inclusion purposes, to include much of the population, this needs to be automated.
Are there startups that are pitching this, or are they already in existence? How's that going?
There are startups that are pitching it, but we have a dearth of data. We have a UK biobank, which is the only credible data bank that we can use for machine learning that's critical. And we do have a bunch of home devices coming online, but there are not enough of them that they're capable of doing these sophisticated measurements in the home at the right sampling rate. Not yet.
Business application there. And
I'll
what are you
I'll keep
seeing?
it very short because I think we've hit this topic. But so I'll go back to where I started. So there's a $360 trillion opportunity. So there's some value here to create. The trick in drug development is making the right choices. It's all 90% of drugs fail in phase 1 forward, and more if you go earlier. Machine learning and AI, the premise of machine learning and AI is that it will help you make better decisions, right? It augments human intelligence with some artificial intelligence. So the promise is there. We're not there yet in terms of the actual implementation of it. You need training data, you need to figure out the right algorithms, right? So there's a tremendous amount of interest. I think there's still a lot of development to do to get the real value from it.
But out of curiosity, on behalf of BCG, corporate clients come to you or people who work there, and what is the advice that's given? Are there tools that can be implemented now? Is the word longevity even discussed?
So every company is interested in AI ML, so for sure. Within pharma, there is an emerging recognition of the importance of this area. You have some large investments, right? So public information, AbbVie has made a large investment with Calico. Novartis has a unit, Regeneron has a unit, and most of the others have made some targeted investments. So there's an emerging understanding. I think the proof is in the pudding, which is therapies that actually work. And so that's I think where we are. We're right at that cusp point where we're going to start to see that, and I think there'll be even more interest.
So here's an interesting, when we prepped this call, I mentioned that it might be kind of like throwing a wrench in it, but I want to explore this a bit. And I don't know what I don't know, but from my understanding, you have therapeutics on one side, you have supplements on the other. Therapeutics have extreme regulatory process, and it's excessively expensive. Therapeutics also have their respective challenges. It will be cheaper and easier and faster. Why is there no middle ground? And is that a possible business application that can be developed? And what do you guys think about it?
So maybe I'll go first.
As it relates to
on this
business
one.
and regulatory.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So I will start the premise that I believe in evidence-based medicine. So, knowledge is empirical. So we want to have data that support our conclusions around safety and efficacy if we're going to put something in a person. Now, there are layers of evidence, though, right? So randomized controlled trials, hopefully replicated, are the gold standard. But there are other kinds of evidence that do matter. So epidemiological data, data in model systems, whether it's animal or otherwise, our kind of accumulated knowledge of pathways and mechanisms, and of course, real-world data. And all of these can have some value in terms of how you think about making these decisions. And there's been it had nothing to do with longevity, there's been a long-standing discussion around, the term of art here is adaptive licensing. And I think I mentioned it to you before. Is there a path? And some very serious people have talked about it. So Hans-Georg Eichler, head of EMA, Peter Honig, longtime head of regulatory at Pfizer, talking about, are there ways to think about if we can get a very limited license on a limited amount of data, maybe it's data based on a biomarker or a small population, something like that, and then expand it over time as real-world data accumulates, or contract, follow what the data tell you. And so there is this conversation around some middle grounds, and there are examples, sort of starting point examples of that. In oncology, it's pretty common that you might get an approval for a later line of therapy, and then as real-world data accumulates, move to an earlier line, that sort of thing. And there's compassionate use exceptions and so on. So there is some middle ground, and I think there's a conversation outside of longevity biology to think about an expansion of that.
If I could chime in on that, maybe I hold a slightly more radical view of this incremental licensing, in that if we could have the FDA agree to say safety has been certified, and then open up a pharmaceutical or a drug to open trials of volunteers, and perhaps volunteers who will fund the study, we would have millions of people trying various, whether it's supplement or pharmaceutical. And in a year, we will learn a lot with all the people there. And a company would not need $1 billion in funding in 10 years to wait to find out. As an example, I was part of the TRIMEX trial with Greg Fahey, and each of the participants we funded our own way, and that enabled Intervene Immune to run the study, and they're still running it, without raising millions of dollars, because each participant said, well, I'm willing to try, I understand efficacy is not proven, and it's okay with me. And so we funded that study. Now imagine if we scaled it up and opened it to folks who just understand their safety established, but not efficacy. They're willing to take a chance, and we have millions of people in that study, and we're learning about all of these supplements. Right now, what happens, even go to the supplement, which is easy. There was a study, maybe there were 30 people in the study, and now they established some dosages. I go read the study, I said, okay, maybe I try it myself. And so just as a personal story, as an example, I decided to try rapamycin. And I calculated my dosage, and I took rapamycin, I went and took Quest and measured, and my level in the blood was below the minimum level expected. So I double my dosage, go back to the lab, and my level is still around the same. I was thinking, my goodness, something nonlinear is going on here. I better go see a real doctor. And so I go to a real doctor, and who knows rapamycin, central doctor for rapamycin. Calculates my dosage, gives me the same dosage I started with, doesn't bother to check my blood level, right? And I gave him my blood work, and anyway, long story short, he did help me. It turns out that I'm a slow metabolizer and a low metabolizer. So we had to find the right window when to measure, delayed in time, and then I needed double the dosage that I started with. But none of that is clear. So how many other people are taking the supplements based on some limited study? If you don't get the right dosage, it's like a U-curve. If you take too little, it doesn't work at all. If you take too much, you can kill yourself. So you really need that right dosage, and it comes back. This is what drives me to have more. And I went to Quest several times. It was $100 a pop. Now, I needed at home a little device that could measure that every hour or so, then I would be able to zoom in. So it's just one example. But the repercussions are very significant, because I could have been, if I trusted the doctors and didn't use my own head, I would have been on this dosage that did nothing for me. And not only am I wasting my money, but it's time too, as we're aging. We're counting on some of these things to do something. And we really don't know what they're doing. And we don't have a way to measure. And we add these supplements. Brian Johnson takes 100 supplements a day, but he has several doctors watching him. I don't know how he measures the impact of all of that stuff, but he has doctors watching. He doesn't reveal how he measures, or the age, how he measures age of his skin, kidney, and so forth. So that's what we really need to be accessible to every one of us. Otherwise, we're taking these supplements or pharmaceuticals, and maybe they're doing nothing. Maybe we're just wasting money. But more preciously is we're wasting time, and we're aging.
I hate to say this, but business application to solve that problem. I mean, I know that there are organizations that are doing that, but still. Did you have a question? I'd like to open it up. I have a couple more here, but does anyone have a question in the audience? Okay, so two more things. You know, what changes do you guys want to see in the regulatory realm to help actually accelerate what we're trying to do in this field?
Accelerate, but on the other side, in medicine, I think what is really, really important is the first rule is not to harm. So
Absolutely.
Definitely regulatory. We need to regulate some of the longevity clinics that are already out there. I decided to invest in Europe because I think Europe is more conservative on one side, but on the other side, I think in terms of medicine, we are so well regulated that we cannot do certain things without actually breaking the law. So I would say definitely we need a more standardized regulation regarding what is actually a longevity clinic, what kind of tests are golden standards, and also, and I totally agree with what you said about your personalized approach. I mean, we see it a lot every time. Some people were taking supplements, they don't even know why, because they were reading they are good for them. But I think we have to have certain standards that hopefully will become golden standards for longevity clinics, because otherwise, and also maybe this is getting a little bit outside of your question, but I think it's very, very important for longevity clinics to work together as well, to share some of the findings. Of course, we all are in similar space, but I think it's very important to share some of our experiences.
So we have a couple minutes left, and I still have questions, but what else would you, oh, yes.
I have one question. So, and this probably goes to all of you. From now to, let's say, 10, 20 years in the future, where there is no longevity clinic, every doctor is providing longevity medicine to you. What needs to change? Regulation, technology, data, business, science, like what's the path forward?
So the question is, what's the path forward, assuming in the next 10 to 20 years, the way that doctors operate are as longevity medicine practitioners? What do we need to have that path come to fruition?
I will go back to what I said earlier, which is both for that and, frankly, a larger social change. I think it has to start with people, public, being interested, and I think we can make that case, right? Life is precious, and we can all have a bit more of it and a bit better of it, and that's valuable, right? There's intrinsic value in that. As we make that case, we build this sort of grassroots around that, right? That will naturally then come to GPs, PCPs. I think there are also some short circuits to your point earlier, right? We can also think about short circuits of how we engage governments and so on. But I care about the fundamental part of it too, which is we have to get ourselves as a society realizing this is valuable and important. But maybe you can talk about some of the short circuits too, how you get GPs more interested more quickly.
I think on one side is getting GPs more trained in what should be the minimum standard test that should be done on everyone. And I think, like when you talk to cardiovascular or preventive medicine doctors, there is actually a lot of good knowledge. It's just very often in many countries, the doctor has 15 minutes per patient, so you can't really do much prevention. You just react. It's a reactive medicine. Also, some of the biomarkers are still expensive for common use, or even epigenetic clocks. They are not widely available because some of them are still not possible to use by doctors. And hopefully one day, once we know which biomarkers work best, some of them could be subsidized. Because as Michael said, we have to find a solution for us to live healthier, because we're going to be spending more and more money on healthcare, on sick care, and actually prevention is long-term much cheaper.
And I'm going to agree with both Michael and Joanna, because we need both a customer base who is interested and willing to pay, and we also need lower costs of a lot of these procedures and measurements. And so I'm coming back with the advocacy and then computerization, machine learning type of solutions.
So I actually have something to add. So in the back, we have Sergio Ruiz, who you mentioned runs Turn Bio, also runs Everest Health, which is a new type of care. It was written up in the Wall Street Journal, which we could look into. But another answer to your question, I think, is twofold. Actually, it's multiple-fold, but two elements that I'll mention is one, incentive structures. Right, the ecosystem is not designed for that. If I go to a doctor right now and I say I need a vitamin D test, it's not covered by insurance. And how do I know I'm deficient? So it's kind of ridiculous. And so how do we change that structure? And I think that has to do with getting the public on board and kind of this narrative that you explained before. You get general population and they start getting on board, they start pressuring government, and it's kind of a domino effect. The second thing I'll also say is that I think that there aren't courses for being a longevity doctor per se. And I know Dr. Evelyn Bischoff has longevity.degree, but it's still in its kind of primary stage. And so it's a matter of educating and incentivizing properly. And we need time, but we also need the general public to help push it. Awareness is absolutely key. So adding on, I think those are two other aspects that are really important. People don't know what they don't know, and so no one's questioning that there are problems with the current medical system, except we're in it, so we know. But if you go walk on the street right now, I go to people and they say, what do you do? I say, I work in longevity. And I've said this before in front of audiences. They say, oh, Botox. No. Oh, transhumanism. No. And the same goes with, well, you know, you actually have a doctor that is just reactive and they're not doing anything preventative, and they don't think about it. And that's why we need to educate, and we need opportunities to implement new tactics and strategies to change mindsets, because awareness is the first step, I think. And you guys are starting. You know, you're the pioneers. Any last questions? Yes.
I was going to asking about Michael's point, which is that what's ultimately going to drive this is public awareness, grassroots. How do we do that? How do we make that happen?
Yeah, so Eric Morgan from BioAge just mentioned, you know, what Michael was talking about. It's kind of this domino effect of awareness. Anyone else? Yes?
Maybe just a comment. So I was just now down at the panel on the, can we really do anything about regeneration?
Mm-hmm.
So even within our own community, I think that there's still different and some maybe wrong approaches to how we, address longevity. So what you're saying here is spot on. We should think about health care instead of sick care, prevention.
Healthcare instead of sick care. I'm just repeating so the people online can hear.
Exactly. So downstairs we were like, okay, aging, like molecules are in the wrong place.
Molecules are in the wrong place.
Let's try to get rid of them.
Let's try to get rid of them, figure out, clean them up.
We're not actually addressing what is causing.
But we're not talking about the cause.
We're very, very much as a longevity kind of community. Some companies are still very much focused, the same as Alzheimer, drug development spent billions and billions and decades of years trying to get rid of amyloid plaques and not thinking that that's actually a neuroinflammation disease caused by chronic inflammation over decades of life.
So they see a problem and they try and answer it, but they don't know the root cause of the problem. They're not digging deep enough, right?
So I think still kind of the core message that I'm seeing now in the last few minutes I've just entered the room, this is really where we should be focusing on, is identifying the root cause, prevention, and systemic approach to what...
Identifying root cause, prevention, and the systemic approach to what real healthcare should be.
And I could add also one thing on the grass movement. I mean, normal healthcare, people are just used to going to a doctor for a fixed solution. I think also another thing in our center, it's actually a self-care focused medicine, because you have to be part of that. I mean, we are not going to fix everything. We will be the tour guide and actually a partner, medical partner, but actually there's a lot on the client's patient side that needs to be done. And some of the, lifestyle changes, some of the decisions have to be done and monitored. So there's a lot of self-care needed, and not everybody is ready for that. So this is something, and at the moment, I don't know anything about a fix, let's say, solution or quick fix solution available today.
It's a very hard problem.
But I think that, if I may comment, so the self-care does get better now that we have so much evidence-based science that certain biomarkers, if they are there for a long time, they can very, very likely lead to those types of disorders. You, by taking an informed approach, so you know the biomarkers, you know that you're vitamin D deficient, etc., you take action, you take that self-care, and then in half a year or a year later, you see that you improve the biomarkers, so actually you can be encouraged. What I think was a big problem of the past is that it was very much anecdotal, right? Try to take those vitamins, maybe in decades and decades later you'll be fine, and people don't know that and they are not motivated. But now that there is biomarker data, we can actually do something, and people, when they see the trends improving, I do think that we can be slightly more kind of encouraging that people do take that proactive step. Yeah? So I think trends through time are encouraging.
Sorry, I can't repeat that all, but it's basically focusing on biomarker data and the possibilities associated with it, right? Recognizing that. Any last words? I want to give a massive thank you for all three of you being here today. I think this was an incredible discussion. Big round of applause for Michael, Fiona, and Joanna,
Master.
and talking about business applications for longevity science. So let's spread the word and get people to do this.